Welcome to this week's edition of CEO Corner. Happy to have Senator Vincent Sheheen from Kershaw visiting with us today, and we're going to talk about some of the issues that are relevant and being taken up in the Senate. So, Senator, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Otis. Pleased to be with you.
I know one of the things that's been of keen interest for you over the last 2 or 3 years is property tax reform and how that is integrated with education. Can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are there and what you're trying to accomplish in the Senate?
I appreciate that, sure. And I think we have to start from the premise that tax reform, comprehensive tax reform, is linked inextricably to education funding because that's where the bulk of our taxes go. And the way we do it now has resulted in several inequalities. One is inequality in the way we tax on different sectors of the economy, especially on business. Unfortunately, we've become to rely heavier and heavier on the share that business pays in property taxes, which is not a good incentive to bring new industry into the state. And secondly, the result has been inequities in the way we fund education. If you live in a county, as a child, if you live in a county that doesn't have much industry, much manufacturing, you're not going to have much opportunities as far as the local funding that's there. Again, what happens is the property taxes go up in those small counties, those rural counties, to try to meet the educational needs. And when property tax goes up, that's again a disincentive for industry to come locate there. So it's really a vicious cycle. But it's going to take leadership and really a comprehensive approach to change that.
Well, I know one of the things that you've talked about is bringing the whole financing piece for public education to the state level so you can address the needs statewide a lot more than what we're trying to deal with at the local level and at the state level. So
that's exactly right. I think until we as a population understand that education and taxes are state issues. They're not really just local issues. Sure, we need local involvement on our education system. We want that. But as far as financing our education system, it's just not right to have one set of opportunities in a poor county and one set in a more wealthy county. And in fact, that holds the entire state back. And what you see is this patchwork of taxation across the state that results in these inequities to businesses and small businesses and large businesses alike in the different counties.
Well, I know the other thing that we've talked about pretty extensively is restructuring government. That's been kind of your little bailiwick, wanting to see things more streamlined for both business and delivery of services and all. So, you know, the Chamber's really interested in how those services are delivered. So I know, talk to us a little bit about what your ideas of restructuring are and where you want to go with that.
I appreciate that. And this is something I've been incredibly interested in and put forth specific proposals over the last 3 or 4 years. There's two pieces to it. One is legislative restructuring, which means the legislature will have the ability to do more oversight of our state agencies, not meddling in what they do, not dictating what they do, but seeing what they do. Because right now our agencies, many of them, operate on autopilot. And then the second part of that is empowering the governor's office. We really need to have an executive branch of government in the governor's office that is responsible and accountable for whether or not agencies are doing the things they want to do, that we need them to do. So if you have the legislature looking over to see what's happening, to act as a check, and then you have the governor with real authority, which would mean we wouldn't have as many elected constitutional officers. We'd look to the governor to appoint many of those people, which would mean that these state agencies would be answerable to the governor and the governor would be answerable to the people. It would work a lot better.
Well, I know y'all got a big week coming up where you're talking about budget issues. And one of the issues is the stimulus package and how those dollars will be used in South Carolina. Your own personal thoughts or maybe the thoughts of the Democratic caucus on that?
Well, I think I think my thoughts are in line with what most of South Carolina thinks, which is if we're going to be on the hook to pay these stimulus dollars back, which we are, then we ought to get our share into South Carolina. So philosophical arguments aside, if we're on the hook to pay it, then we certainly ought to spend it here in South Carolina. The other important point, I think, for your business folks here is that if we don't receive these stimulus dollars that are supposed to go into public education, that's where they're directed, then the local governments are going to most likely raise property taxes. And when, unfortunately now, under our current system, when property taxes are raised, business bears the brunt of that. So these stimulus dollars coming into the state are important to keep the teachers working, to keep education at least at a level that's sustainable, but also important because the local property tax burden will go up.
Well, that's always fearful of us, and you know we've been talking about that for 2 or 3 years now. One other thing that's pretty important to us too, and it's tending to rear its head at the national level a lot more than the local level, but it's employee free choice. And I know we got a bill that's coming through the Senate now that would guarantee secret ballot elections and not card check. Thoughts on that, and do you think we can get there on that if we work hard enough?
I think that secret ballots are important, and I think that you'll see a lot of support in the General Assembly. I think the question of whether it should be put into the state constitution is where there's going to be issue. I, for one, tend to not favor amending our state constitution. I think that I think we really need to scrap the constitution we have now and go back to basics, which are how does our government operate efficiently, how can we do some of the restructuring things we talked about, and then have those core liberties that we see reflected in our national constitution and not amend it. So I think there's probably a way to skin that cat, but I don't know that the constitutional amendment is the way to do it.
Well, the other thing we want to congratulate you on, I know that you've announced to run for governor from a Democratic Party standpoint, and that you had a pretty successful first quarter, raising about $273,000. Right. So apparently everything's going real well.
Well, it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, but I tell you, if we don't get the state moving economically and educationally, and of course you know those two things are linked, if we don't get the state moving forward here in the next 4 years, I'm worried that we'll be a generation behind, and we can't afford that. So I'm excited about the opportunity.
Well, Senator, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for joining us on CEO Corner. Next week we'll have another important person in South Carolina that will be talking about business issues that affect you both directly and indirectly.